Hello,
Hi.
my name is Greg.
My name is Brendan.
And together we are Boyfriends Who Sing Together, also known as
Fab
the
Duo.
And we just wanted to reach out to every single one of you party people and wish you a very, extremely fabulous Pride.
Yes, happy Pride to everyone in Seattle and across the world. I hope you stay safe and healthy. And remember,
Be you, be proud,
and be
loud. Bye. Happy Pride.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Leong with Cairo 7, and I'm joined right now with the Kennedy Catholic High School students. They led sit-ins and protests after the dismissal of two of their teachers who were engaged to their same-sex partners. So we're here today for a dialogue, and we want to talk about the importance of organizing these protests and speaking up this today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we want to start right now with Henry and MJ. We want to ask you, why was it important for you to stand up for your teachers and to make sure that your voices were heard?
For me personally, I just think the reason I was so involved with it was because, to me, bringing moral change is a big fight that could last a while. But I mean, when you're bringing so much inclusivity to an establishment where maybe you don't see yourself being represented all the time, I think when you do have opportunities to bring awareness, it's always the perfect time to jump on and be as the best advocate you can be.
I think for me personally, I had a very strong connection to Miss Beatty. So when I heard that she got fired for something that was just morally unjust, I felt like it was I had to use my voice to kind of speak up for the injustice there because she helped me in finding that voice. So I just felt like it was my calling to do so.
Yeah, a very important movement that you were able to lead. And our next question is for Maddie and Sosna. As young people, was it frightening or intimidating to stand up to the school and to church leaders? And were you concerned at all about what the consequences would be for standing up?
I would answer that with a yes and no. I know the church has a lot of power and so does the administration, but it was just a lot easier when I knew I had my family supporting me and my fellow students backing me up. And it all just seemed worth it because these are people's jobs on the line and I could easily transfer to another school if need be.
For me, it was a bit frightening to stand up in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. It was a really large crowd and speaking to the microphone, but I wasn't scared at all about the consequences. And I wouldn't have cared if I got kicked out because I knew I was doing the right thing and I had my parents' full support.
Okay, well said, both of you. And now this next question is for Maddie and Emiliano. What was the response from your parents and family members to your role in the protest? When you spoke to them, what did they say?
My mom just knew we had to take action. We couldn't sit back and be quiet. They were definitely a little surprised that I was willing to help because I've just always been more the quiet girl. But my mom was just really supportive and encouraging, and she helped me work on the logistics of planning the sit-in and walk out of the school.
Yeah, so on my end, they were like scared at first because they were scared that my scholarships could be revoked by the school, and there was pressure about that and me not participating. And then there was my brother who actually kind of invoked me to participate. He's kind of always like told me to stand up for like what I believe in. And so there was like my parents telling me like one thing and then my brother telling me another.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you know, the protest that you had, you know, this question is for MJ and Sosna. What impact did your protests have, not only at your high school, but around the country and the world?
I think it was interesting to see the impact of our small local community because if you keep in mind that Kennedy Catholic is a school that has like 800 students in it, and like our message and our fight reached like news broadcasts around the world, and I think that is an impact in and of itself, and like people around the world being able to see that this is a battle that we're fighting here as long as other places. And also like the response from our community was um it was crazy. I mean, I didn't expect that many people from like around the area, even though Seattle is pretty liberal, to be in support of the injustice that we were fighting.
For me, I believe the protests really made people at Kennedy Catholic open up their eyes to the injustices going on. Before the protests, there were numerous racial and other injustices at Kennedy, but the protests affected how people responded to it now, because um, you can see how fed up the students at Kennedy Catholic were. Like everyone were protesting, and it made us realize we need to speak up and actually fight back to the injustices. And like MJ said, it was like national news, so that like meant how crucial this situation was, how unjust it was.
And this is for Henry and Emiliano. Uh, what do you think is powerful about activism and protests, and how can they positively affect change in our own communities?
You can start.
I think that they actively create visibility, accountability, and transparency, because visibility shows a physical like representation of your community, and everybody who stands on a protest, like it shows a physical representation of people, and that gives you a comfort in a sense in your community. So it shows you like, wow, like the people around here actually care about this situation. And for me, if you associate with the topic of the protest, and it gives you I guess it gives you like more hope in a sense. And then accountability is like educating yourself on a topic, like to help educate the people around you. And the people at the protest like will tell you everything they stand for. And I love that. Like people will happily help you out, like to not only educate yourself, but to educate the people around you. And then transparency, it's like representing what you fight for. And like it's not about saying like you just believe in something. It's about like actively taking the initiative to live it out, and then like being 100% for the cause you're protesting. So you're actively creating a better society around you.
For me, I think I've always been prone to being very assertive about the way I feel and very outspoken about specific issues that, are very personal to me. So I think when it comes to why protests are so effective, it's because we're expanding the margins of what it means to be a community. We're bringing out the youth, we're bringing out women, we're bringing out people of color, we're bringing people of the LGBTQ community. And at some point, when you have a bunch of different intersectional communities coming together, it's so powerful, because we know that any systemic oppression that roots from injustice is always coherently targeted by a bunch of our movements, because we understand where it roots from, and we understand that unity is so powerful. And I think that it affects a lot of communities so profoundly, because we understand that, especially this year personally, I feel like we've been at a crossroads where we understand that if we don't become more advocates for issues that are so personal to us, that we just let a lot of injustice and hate get swept under the carpet. And I don't think that's the personal way to go about it.
And the next question, also for you, Henry and Emiliano, what did you say to those who fought against you, and those that, they vocalized their disagreements? I mean, was that hard to deal with as well?
So like many people didn't say anything up front to us. It was like their actions spoke louder for them. So it's like not showing up or not saying anything on social media about it, like trying to ignore like it never happened. At least personally, that's what I experienced. And I instantly called out the people that are close to me. And if I didn't see them there, like I definitely called them out, like, hey, like what's the situation? Why weren't you there? But a lot of them were just excuses to just not be there, hiding behind political views, hiding behind religious views, when honestly none of that even like has to do with the protest. Like your religious views don't cover up the LGBTQA plus foundation. Like nothing should matter like that. And then like I just think that we didn't necessarily control the narrative. It was just the truth, and we just backed up the truth, and you can never be wrong when you back up the truth.
For me, I understand also that, when a lot of these type of issues occur in our country, you really can't control the narrative or how it will be spun on the media or, in social media platforms. So I didn't really try to control the narrative as much, because as long as we were having a profound message that connected to people we specifically wanted to include, which was, a multiracial movement and a sexuality movement, we were very inclusive about it. So as long as it was profoundly reaching them, then that was the main point for me, and for anyone that was involved with it. So I think that was very essential. But as far as people who were opposed to it, I did get a couple messages just because I was organizing, and they were just very opposed to the fact that, why are you going against your school where you're giving money to them, and they could really have like backlash towards you. And I mean, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but at the same time, your voice is a political tool, and if you're not showing up to important protests like these and fighting for people who aren't always represented, marginalized communities especially, you're a part of the issue as well. So I think that it was very essential for me to push that narrative as far as I could, even if it came with backlash.
And this next question is for Sosna and MJ. Now, you've all agreed that the protest, it was the first step in a very long fight to bring change and to fight for the injustices brought towards your teachers. What comes next?
I think what should come next is the Archdiocese taking out the LGBTQ clause out of teachers' contracts because it's not relevant to their teaching ability. Also, I would like an LGBTQ club or group at Kennedy Catholic, so those people would feel welcomed by administration and cared for.
Same thing with Sosna. I feel like this year has made like a lot of our students and a lot of our community uncomfortable, and it's like now that we're starting to do something about that, and I really appreciate that we're doing that. So I think one of the first steps we could be taking is taking out that morality clause in the teacher's contract, because it's not equally enforced among all teachers, because there's no way to like police that except for the way you want it. And also to start a GSA at Kennedy Catholic would be really helpful to give students resources and an outlet to just be their true selves.
And for, this next question is for Henry and Maddie. What would you tell other young people who they're not sure if they're ready to also become activists?
I would just say, I found a quote that fit really well with this, is if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. And I just feel like remaining silent in situations like these is very complacent. And if people don't have the courage to speak up, nothing will ever change. And right now, especially, people are afraid to voice their opinions, but we need to be more proud of our beliefs and stand up for what we know is right. And if you ever are confused and don't want to speak up, it's maybe a time to educate yourself on the subject.
For me, I think I struggled with this when I was younger as well, just dipping my toes into activism. But the best advice I would definitely give is, your voice is a political tool again. And at some point you have to decide what you stand for and what you truly believe in and what you're willing to fight for, whether it's a person you don't even know, because that's inherently what compassion is all about. And I think that, when we talk about being inherently rooted in activism, we have to acknowledge that if you are going to consider activism, you don't, tread lightly around it, and you don't, do performative activism. You have to really be compassionate about your feelings about certain issues, and you really have to be there at all times because it's so essential for you to be showing up to every occasion. And to add to it, you also have to realize that activism is far from just being on the front lines with a sign. It's such a broad topic, and it encompasses, artists, writers, scientists, educators, and it's such an important thing that encompasses and brings everyone in. So if you're willing to do that, then I think you have to just go for it and realize what you're passionate about and be very consistent.
And, right now, just around the world, we're seeing a lot of people, get involved. What are some words of advice that you would give them, Emiliano and Sosna, that they can continue to fight for a better future, and some advice that they can continue down this path to make a difference?
I really think I'm going to reiterate everything that Henry and Madison just said because it was perfect. It's just that you can't be afraid, and you can't be afraid of people who discourage you. And everything in the unknown should empower you to envision a better future. So it's it shouldn't be scary to not know what's on the other side of the fence, and it should actually fill you with more hope and push for a better future around you. And then for those who are unsure and don't know where to start, I just say you don't start truly living until you're uncomfortable. So you got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and leaving your circle of comfort is only going to expand your views. So it's the more you leave your comfort circle, the more you're going to learn about the real world. And then my last thing is just empathy nurtures a strong mind.
Basing off what Emiliano said, my words of advice would be to never stop fighting despite the uncomfortability, and for the right thing, and to be passionate about what you're fighting for. Because if you lack passion, then there's no reason to be fighting for it. And if you keep fighting, eventually change will come.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. A very important dialogue that we're having and we're continuing to have as we move forward. Is there anything else that you would want to add?
Just that everybody should provoke conversation.
Don't stay silent.
Basically what Emiliano said, there's one quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that I like around situations like this. And he says that, sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Does anyone else want to jump in right now as we wait for MJ?
Oh, sorry about that. He says that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. I think that's really powerful because, our voice is powerful and it's our tool to fight against injustices.
For me, the thing I want to add that I find so essential is you're fighting for your future, so it's so important for you to show up in any capacity. And I also want to let everyone know that if you're of age, make sure to vote. It's not just for presidential elections, but across the board in your city, in your state. We have to start electing people who really represent us and have the foundations of what a true justice Democrat would be. And I think that once we start electing people who have the best interest in mind for us, we will have more a say in what goes on in our cities, in our counties, and everything else. So we just have to make sure that we show up to vote and to always be present on social media and to always talk to our neighbors. It's very hard. It's time consuming. It's about knocking on doors, talking to people you don't know, reaching out, and just being very effective with whatever message you're trying to resonate with people.
I would just add that you don't always have to be on the front lines to make a difference, and even just donating or educating yourself, educating your friends and family is also very helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you, Maddie, Emiliano, MJ, Henry, and Sosna. If people want to get in contact with you and they want help, we are putting up your information so they can reach out to you and they can learn how they can also make a difference in their community and how important it is to stand up right now and to speak up and to not remain silent. So we thank you so much for everything you're doing and for inspiring the next generation to make an impact. So thank you.